So how to build smarter cities and smarter societies? First of all, we have to admit our existential problems have not been solved. We are faced with climate change, financial, economic, and spending crisis, conflict and war in many areas of the world, mass migration, terrorism, and all of this has, I believe, one root cause, which is lack of sustainability. That means we're overusing resources in some places that creates a lack of resources elsewhere, which causes conflict, war, mass migration, and many other things that we'd like to get rid of. So if we want to live in a better future, we need to solve this very issue. If we don't do so, then it's predicted that we would see pretty soon economic and population collapse. At least 2.5 billion people would die if we go on as before. So we have to change the system we're living in. I'm talking about the financial, economic, and social system. And the question is, how can we do that within the time that's available? The United Nations says we have to get this done by 2030. So governments wanted to come up with new ways to rule people more efficiently. They were requesting to get something like a digital scepter, and this is how it has been built. Take big data about everything that's going on in the world, and actually, you cannot stay out of this system, because if you use the internet, then basically you're being targeted by cookies. If you turn off the cookies, you will get no service. If you read the newspaper, there are about 15 different sites that will follow your habits, and if you click a web link, then this is recorded and also sold. And there are more than 40 organizations in the UK that can see your browsing history even if you deleted this. That means you're known in every single detail. This is done by companies, keyword is surveillance capitalism. It's also done by governments, and there's basically a very close collaboration, and of course secret services are doing the job. $100 billion has been spent on surveillance tools and infrastructures to hack all the digital devices we're using: computers, smartphones, smart TVs, smart cars. When you talk via Skype, this is being transcribed, it's being mined, it's being machine learned. So you're being machine learned, basically. We're being targeted. 100 billion means more than 1 billion per terrorist. This is not about terrorists, this is about us. And with 300 parameters, it's claimed that we would be more predictable than by our friends or family. That means these algorithms, the companies that use them and have the data about us, they know us pretty well, and they use this data to manipulate it in a way more sophisticated than our friends can do. So they know about our psychological weaknesses, and they're being used or misused, basically, not only to make us buy products, but these kind of, some people say, mind control techniques, social engineering and deception techniques are now also the basis of modern politics. The keyword is big nudging. That means we're being manipulated. The idea was, of course, to make citizens behave in a more environmental friendly way, in a more healthy way, and all of this. And we'll have to look into the reality in a couple of minutes. So the question is, and that's what has been proposed by some people, could, with all these data, the world now be ruled like a wise king? Is democracy an outdated technology? Do we need to get rid of this? For sure, what we can say by today, a technological totalitarianism has been built. It's there. We have mass surveillance and profiling. We have behavioral manipulation also on a massive scale. We have citizen scores, karma police programs. We have predictive policing and censorship. It's there. Brave New World, 1984. The technology is there. It's just the question, when will it be turned on? Can be done anytime. So given that there's so much more data about every single individual than any Secret Service has had in the past, now, how long can democracy survive? How long can human rights survive? We need to be very concerned about this. Will it be to the benefit of people? Well, if you believe Chris Anderson, then you would just need as much data as possible and the truth would reveal itself. You wouldn't need any theory and no science. And so the paradigm of the early big data movement was that if you have more data, that means more knowledge, and if you have more knowledge, then you have more power, and more power means more success. So it was a very primitive way of thinking about data. You would see what's wrong, you would fix the system where it's broken, and so something like a digital crystal ball was built in order to see what's going on in the world in any place in real time. And even predict into the future using predictive analytics as much as that can be done. Now, does it work? No. Unfortunately not. So there's this issue of spurious correlations. The more data you have, the more patterns will you find in the data. And a lot of these patterns are meaningless or even misleading. Take this one. Number of serial killers as a function of chocolate consumption. You know, if that was true, it would be very dangerous to live in Switzerland.
It is.
And perhaps we'll have to talk about this over a beer, maybe. Here's another correlation. Number of forest fires as a function of number of ice cream eating children. Obviously, both is caused by heat. But if you would lock away ice cream eating children, obviously you wouldn't reduce the number of forest fires. Now, if you think these kind of mistakes could never happen in reality to policy makers, to secret services, to big companies, unfortunately you're wrong. Here is one of the key success stories of big data. Google flu trends, celebrated in the beginning, ended as a great failure. It's taken off the web. Here's another case, 23andMe, kind of a sister company of Google, if you want. And what happened is that it had to be taken off the market by the health authority because the implications were not reliable. Would you send your genetic probe to another company who would get different implications, outcomes, and predictions? So that was not a scientifically based thing. And also, if you look at the most livable cities in the world, surprisingly, you don't find the big IT nations in this list. And the first generation of smart cities, those technologically driven approaches have failed. Now, I would say, maybe artificial intelligence can save us. You know, in about 20 years, artificial intelligence may overtake actually human intelligence. That's the prediction. Then some people say computers will be so smart that will solve all the problems of humanity within a very short time period. And so now all the data goes through machine learning algorithms, deep learning, and so on. Google is applying it, for example, to patient records. And it's not only a problem because it's our data, our patient data. The problem is lacking transparency, as I will show. So we have been told that artificial intelligence systems would be objective, they would be superior to human thinking, they wouldn't be biased in all this. And look what happened. Microsoft had to take their chatbot off after one day because it turned into a Nazi. And also, the powerful Google algorithm can actually be manipulated, as you can see over here. And we know in the meantime that those powerful algorithms discriminate against women, against colorful people. And this is very concerning if you think about a life where maybe one day a citizen score will determine all our life. And it's based on conclusions that are not well justified. So I would like to say that today's data-driven approach severely contradicts our fundamental values, contradicts data protection laws, the Constitution, the UN Human Rights Convention, also the Bible, and it has led to chaos, including the manipulation of elections, a post-fact society, disorientation, social conflict and fragmentation, and crumbling democracies. So it's not the benevolent dictatorship. Our societies haven't improved over that kind of technology and its use. It became worse. There is no benevolent dictatorship. It's just dictatorship. So our society is at a crossroads. We may lose what we built over hundreds of years: freedom and self-determination, human dignity, innocence, fairness, justice, pluralism, democracy, and all this. Now suddenly people get upset about Cambridge Analytica and Mercer and Trump and so on and so on. But you know, elections have been manipulated at least since 2012 in many countries, maybe even earlier, right? Obama knew how to use big data. Anonymity of voting was just ignored. It's a basic right, it's a fundamental of democracy. And not only do they know what we would vote, also they can manipulate this voting. That means in the end, it's the companies that pay most who determine the outcome and not anymore the citizens. Pluralism is gone. And Obama knew what he said when he was warning. These are also the time around the world when some of the fundamental ideals of liberal democracies are under attack, and when notions of objectivity in the free press and of facts and evidence are trying to be undermined or in some cases ignored entirely. And he said, it's the responsibility to dig and to question. It would not be enough to give people a microphone in these times, because he knew how powerful these new manipulation tools were. It's a new kind of propaganda and censorship tool. These are cyber weapons. These are elections have been turned into psyops, and that's why it feels like war to be in these election times. And we have ended up in the meantime in these fact-free worlds. Unfortunately, you know, using social bots to deceive people is more profitable than telling them the truth, and that's why actually the bad uses of this kind of technology seems to be taking over. So we had to ask this question in Scientific American: will democracy survive big data and artificial intelligence? I don't think democracy is outdated. There's so many things that really matter that nobody would want to give up on. And this is not built into the kind of systems that have been created to govern society, kind of the new operating systems built by Google and IBM and Facebook and so on. And so we need to worry about these loopholes in the privacy protection law. There is extraterritorial areas in the world where no national, no European law applies, where you can basically do with data what you like, and it's being done by companies and by governments, and that situation is creating large damage to our societies in many countries. So this has to end. It's our data. We need to get them back. We need to get control over them. We need to make sure that over-personalization is stopped by law, that this data will be used in a democratical way, in a scientific way, in an ethical way, in a transparent way, because I told you lack of transparency will lead to very bad uses of big data. So it's only transparency that helps, and that's why science is more qualified maybe than other institutions to come up with value for everyone, value for society. So I think what we should do is build a network of digital labs all over Europe, like in Brussels, in Berlin, and in The Hague, and in Zurich, and so on, and connect them together to have interdisciplinary teams of scientists work on with these data to create value for everyone. If we don't do that, I think democracy will soon be gone, And this is really a final word of warning, I'd like to say. Now, here is the issue. Even though we have better technology than ever, data volume increases even faster than that. That means we cannot do automated evaluation of data. We would always miss something important. It takes science to know what data to look at and in what way. Systemic complexity increases even faster. That's why we are losing control over the world as we're trying to control it top-down. We have to acknowledge that we are living in a complex world, in a densely connected world, and that has a lot of implications. In these systems, self-organization is common. That can create actually very efficient patterns, but also it can create cascading effects that mess up the world. And the financial crisis is actually just one example for such a situation. So what we need in these times of digital transformation is a resilient society, a society that can flexibly adapt to challenges and unexpected developments. So we need to boost resilience through diversity, decentralization, distributed control, subsidiarity. Don't think that big business will solve the world's problems, because what they're doing is they're trying to find the best solution to a problem, and then they scale it up to the entire world, and that's the solution for the next 30 years, while maybe 2 years later there will be even much better solution. And so this ends in this kind of world where we would really like to have a diverse world where there are solutions for all the challenges that may come up. So we need to build digital democracy, boost collective intelligence, and there are actually new scientific insights that tell us how to upgrade democracy and create that collective intelligence that's better than any single solution.
Can you wrap up? We have to.
We need to empower people. We can do that with digital assistants. We can actually build a new kind of economy that would create a circular economy that would solve the resource issues and sustainability issues by combining the Internet of Things with blockchain technology, and create new market forces through feedback loops that would really solve the world's issues. But what is needed is the creation of an innovation and information ecosystem that allows everyone to participate in the innovation process and come up with solutions for the challenges of the world. So this is a good conclusion. So.